stuff you do as ambassadors of historic preservation, and you're, attuned to questions and you know what's going on in the community. Just when you're out in the community, just keep your antenna up. If somebody wants to talk to you about what, and they're presenting it in a way that, oh, wait a second, they want to talk to me about whether I'm going to vote yes or no on a specific landmarking or specific certificate of appropriateness, that's when you need to push back some and say, I'm not going to chat with you about that now. Okay. Any questions about that stuff? We got a scenario that's in the slides. In the interest of time, I'm just going to leave that there. It wraps up, it's a little scenario about a hearing that helps kind of button up the ex parte communication and the open meetings issues. Okay. You all good on the open meetings law? Right, we all know, right? Any discussion of commission business among 3 or more members has to occur in an open meeting. The only nuance is, it's on my handout, is yes, the open meetings law is a rule of 3, and it means that a one-on-one discussion is okay, but not for quasi-judicial matters. So if you're just working on the update to the historic preservation plan, and Dan, you want to meet with Kelly and have a coffee and get to know his views on the historic plan in general, that's just 2 of you talking. That doesn't have to be an open meeting. That's cool. But you can't meet one-on-one, talk about how we're going to vote on a quasi-judicial matter. Same due process issue comes up. Do we need or want to talk about social media? Is anyone using social media?
I do my best to stay away from it.
Any of you feel like
I have it. So
in your social media life, is it are people finding their way to you as commissioner through social media?
No.
Okay. No. All right. You get on social media and sometimes you see this thread about some historic preservation project going on?
No.
And okay, good. Okay. If you ever do, just make sure, I would encourage you to just tune that stuff out. That's social media, that's their world. They can do their thing.
Even if they're spreading misinformation, just don't interact.
Even if it's disinformation, right? Now, if it's disinformation and you feel like this is very injurious to us as a commission, it's basically just spreading. Send it to Madison, staff can decide with the manager and staff about do we and how do we, if at all, jump in on this issue. Because you know how it is on social media, the people that have that view, you can post whatever you want on social media in that thread. What are you gonna get in response from them? Just one more accusation that everything you posted is disinformation, right? So, yeah. So sometimes I've had some situations where the entity decides, look, we get it, it's a high profile controversial topic. You know what we can do to help with the community understanding of this is we'll put a dedicated page up on our website. And we'll move material that you usually have to click through a couple times on the planning department site. We'll move that for the front page and say, click here for information on the tearing down the Allman Brothers house, right? And then people can go and find the information there about that controversial application quickly. And those who want to read it, they'll read it. Those who want to get on social media and do their thing, they'll do their thing. Social media is not the place to adjudicate your stuff. All right. Ethics, I think we've talked about this, but just for the new folks, I want to remind you that you're a home rule municipality and you've adopted your own local code of ethics. It's in an ordinance. It's lengthy. It's got a lot of legalese. So that's just the way it is. But what you want to do is find those ordinances or get a summary if staff has a summary and plow through them a couple times so you have a good working understanding how the code of ethics works. So you're prepared to spot and address an ethics issue well in advance. Okay. My only other takeaway on ethics issues is much better to spot it and resource it much earlier than have it come up in the moment, right? Ethics problems that they're not like wine. If left unattended, they don't get better, right? And so, you know, if you're reading the packet, you go, oh, wait a second, I know that applicant, I was, he and I did some business deal years ago, am I conflicted? Your attorney Madison, your manager, they want to help you succeed. They want to help you get to the right place. So it's always, they'd love to hear from you. Well in advance, they can't be your individual ethics advisor, but they can give you tell you how the code works from staff's perspective. You still have the right to make the choice, I guess, subject to this voting rule that you have. But they can help you think about that. All right? And then the last thing on ethics is, you agree with this notion? Kind of like the 24/7 thing. In matters of ethics, particularly in local government ethics in this day and age, sometimes it's just the case that perception is reality and reality is perception, right? And that's not a legal rule. As the attorney, I admit, it's not the legal rule, right? But it's a residue around every ethics issue that I just encourage elected and appointed officials to think about. And you can come to whatever judgment you want with respect to perceptions, right? But it's just a reminder that the law, if you're really concerned about perceptions, the law can, if it wasn't an actual violation, the law is going to save you. It wasn't an actual violation. But the perceptions may be such that you're getting pillared for something. And yeah, we've seen this in the papers all the time. So. All right, any questions around ethics? All right, let's talk about, maybe this is something I should have covered earlier. So the last thing, let's go to the next slide. One of the things we encourage at Source is to remember deliberations. Your deliberations as the commission is one of the most important pieces of the hearing, right? So everybody, the citizens have spoke, the applicant spoke, the staff has spoken. Now you're at that point in the hearing where you're going to take the information that you've learned at the hearing, hold it up against your existing criteria, and make your decision. So in deliberations, as the chair, make sure each member has an opportunity to participate in the deliberation. Decide whether you have rules like everybody speaks once before anybody speaks twice. Have rules that when you're doing your deliberation, you ever have the citizen, like Robert says something and the citizen goes, I want to say something about that. Do we let them speak? Their time's over, right? But if we're nice and we say, okay, I'll give you 1 minute. Then if somebody over here goes, oh, I'd like to respond to that. Do we have to give that person another minute, right? That kind of thing. So the answer is yes, I think so, right? So the deliberations is very important. From a legal standpoint, remember that with regard to land use applications at the local level, if people are challenging your decision, your legal case rises and falls based solely upon the record that you develop in your hearing. Like if the land use application is challenged in court, we don't have another trial in the district court about the substance of the application. All the courts do is review a transcript of what you have done here. It's very important. It's also it's a little disconcerting. I've read things that I've said on a transcript months later. I'm like, did I really say that? That kind of thing. So you need to remember that. Everything's being recorded, these hearings, and everything could potentially be a legal transcript used as part of our defense, right? So let's see. Let's go to the next slide. Actually, we've dealt with most of this about questions. The deliberation point is the point where you as a board are talking with each other. How do you sequence questions for the applicant? Do you do it right after each one of them speaks? The citizens speak and then the applicant, or what's your flow typically?
Oh, I see. So typically staff gives their presentation, commission asks questions of staff.
Yep.
Applicant gives their presentation, commission asks questions of applicant.
Yep.
Public comment. Applicant comes back up in response to public comment as a whole,
Okay.
directed towards the commission, and then the commission asks any final questions.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
one more thing, if there are questions from the public, staff takes them, or someone here takes them, and we answer them all at once at the end of the public, rather than individually.
Yep. Yeah, I would encourage, I think that's best practice. The citizens, they stand up and they start asking you questions. You don't have to feel like you have to answer those, right? Say, thank you for this is actually your opportunity to provide us your testimony regarding the application. It's not time to question the commissioners. But having said that, staff has noted your question and it may be addressed later in the hearing. And then you all can repurpose the question if it's still a lingering question, right? Building on what I heard during public comment, can you tell me how durable the materials are? whatever it may be. That's the best way to do that. I would say if you're dealing with questions like in steps, staff presents, then you ask questions, then citizens. From where you sit as the judges, I encourage you to hold your powder as much as you can, right? Because if you have a question too early, sometimes it can come across as leading or what have you. And it may be that if you have a question now, maybe if you just wait and let everybody get their testimony in, then it naturally gets resolved by the back and forth of the other participants, right? And then your question's been answered, right? Okay. Let's go to the next one. Next slide. Okay, we've buttoned all this up. But just remember that in the quasi-judicial matters, you have to base your decision on the existing relevant standards. They're probably in the packet, right? Part of the staff report. So when you start deliberating with each other, then that's the time to get those standards out and speak to the standards, right? Talk about, I'm in favor of this application or I'm opposed to this application because of this or that as related to our standards for approval or disapproval, right? Give the appropriate weight and credibility to the evidence. Not all evidence is created equal, right? My petition example was an example of that, right? What if your question was answered about the quality of the materials and it was by an expert, but all of the citizen testimony is, well, that material is junk. Do they get equal weight, right? Yeah, if you have an expert testifying as to a matter within their area of expertise, I think their evidence is entitled much greater weight and credibility, even though it may sound frustrating to the citizen. But if they're offering you no more than opinion testimony, that it's junk or it stinks, and it's not based on, right, expert factual testimony, then you as the decision makers have to give that expert testimony more weight and credibility, right? Okay. Last thing I would suggest is to use what I call the rule of why in your deliberations. Anybody know what that building is?
Fred and Ginger.
Fred and Ginger. And where is it? Oh, shoot.
I'm not
I
sure.
didn't write
Germany,
down.
isn't it?
Prague.
Prague or?
Prague, yeah.
Yeah,
Prague.
it's been a long time since I studied that one.
So what if this is the artistic rendering for a facade improvement for you all? And the historical building is the piece on the right, on the left side, and the proposal is to revise the facade to add Fred and Ginger. Yeah, that's right. That's a building in Prague called the Dancing House or Fred and Ginger. The architectural, I'm not going to use the right word because I stink at this stuff. The theme or the concept they were trying to get across was two people dancing. This was at a time when Fred and Ginger were big on the silver screen. That's how
I can see where the left side seems to be a little bit more feminine with the flare at the bottom, and the right side seems to be a little bit more masculine with the straight edges.
So let's say we've had a great hearing on this, a lot of interesting testimony, and we get to that point. We're going to bring it back for deliberations, and the chair says, "Okay, great, thanks everyone for participating in the hearing. Now it's time for the commission. Let's deliberate on how we're going to decide this case." Right? And Chair, I'll start our discussion. I just want everybody to know I'm going to vote no because I don't like it. That's a little bit of a rocky start, right? But we can get there just by using what I call the rule of why. Another commissioner is going to say, "Why don't you like it?" Right? Well, I don't like it. I'm going to vote no, and I don't like it. Because the applicant didn't donate to the Christmas fund ran by the police department last year. No, staff's gonna jump in and remind you that's not a criteria. And that kind of thing. Okay, I'm gonna vote no because I don't like it because it doesn't meet our standards. Are we done? We're getting there. Use the why. Use the rule of why again. Right?
Why doesn't it
And he has somebody else asking, why doesn't it meet our standards? Oh, okay, I'm gonna vote no because I don't like it because it doesn't meet our standards. And in particular, it doesn't meet this standard that's in our code, and it's a Department of Interior standard related to compatibility of architectural and new architectural elements with the historic concept or theme of the facade, right? Whatever that may be. So now you're getting there just by that natural. Let's go to the next slide, right? Oh, there it is. Yeah. I'm gonna vote no, because I don't like it, because it doesn't meet our standards, because it doesn't comply with the secretary's specific treatment standard that requires a new addition must preserve the building's historic character, form, significant materials, and features. Are we done? Why? That's the last word on the slide. We just keep asking ourselves, and you'll naturally get to, as long as you're just talking about the evidence that's been presented and that's in the staff report and all, as long as you're speaking to all that, you naturally get to a conversation where you have articulated on the record your defensible reasons for your decision. Now, if you don't agree with Sam's nonsensical view of the world, then you just use the rule of why the other direction. And it's okay, we've had plenty of transcripts where reasonable people have differences of opinion on how the standard ought to be applied. Now, the last piece of that is the nuance. If it's not about how we apply the standard based on our judgment, but it's about what does the standard mean, that's where staff's there to help you. Can you remind me, what is the intent? What is the meaning of this standard? One I like to use just to pick on planners a little bit is, you got, maybe the council sees this more, you got a special use permit for a new building, and the whole issue that's in play is whether or not they can get special permission to exceed the height limit. Applicant testifies, we meet the height limit. Neighbors testify, it doesn't meet the height limit the way we measure it, right? So the whole debate is about the standard, not how you apply the standard. So staff, could you remind us, what is our height standard and how do we measure it? And then Madison and her team get to explain to you why it took 2.5 pages in the code book to explain, right, how we determine the height of a building, right? That kind of thing. But they're there to support you with that stuff, including the 200 and some odd pages of Department of Interior standards for treatment of historical structures.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so good, take the time you need to do that, right? It's gonna be, particularly in the hotly contested cases, it may feel a little torturous, but people want to see that deliberation occurring on the record. By the way, even if it's a no-brainer and all the evidence points to yes and staff recommended yes and everyone's good with that, I think it's still good for the decision makers to say something on the record just before they vote. It's a little disconcerting that if we close the hearing and then the next thing we say is, all right, hearing closed, anybody have a motion? Yes, I vote yes. They'd like to hear you say, great presentation, thank you for the thorough staff report. Other commissioners may have their own thoughts, but I just want to say I'm inclined to vote yes because, as was stated during the staff report, I think it meets all my criteria. What you've done is just, with your own words, adopted the findings in the staff report. That's always a nice little button-up kind of thing to do. Okay. All right, do you ever use conditions of approval?
Yeah.
Okay, make sure the condition, make sure it's clear. It says what you want it to say. Get staff help in drafting that condition. Not so much anymore at Sursa because I just deal with the litigation, but when I was a sitting town attorney for about 25 years, several times a year we'd have what I call conditioner's remorse the next morning. Like, we were trying to remember what the condition was intended to do, right? Because it got a little convoluted, right? If you ever have that situation and I don't know what this condition, I don't know what we're trying to do here. Let's start over. Let's redraft it. If need be, we can continue the hearing and staff can bring us a couple options and we can study that language closely, particularly if it's critical, right? And make sure it reflects what we want the condition to be. Right? And so then lastly, sometimes conditions, somebody will jump up here and say, you can't require that. That may be true. Maybe you don't have lawful authority to impose a condition that you're seeking to impose. If that's true, it's another reason to have staff help you. So, yeah. The conditioner's remorse from a legal standpoint for applicants is sometimes they'll nod their head at 11:30 at night. Yeah, I guess I'll go, okay, I can agree to that. The next morning they wake up and go, why did I agree to that? They don't lose their legal right to challenge the condition just because they nodded their head at 11:30 the night before. They still have every legal right to challenge the legality of the condition, the ambiguity of it, your enforcement of it, if they want to do those things. So it's all that better to make sure that conditions are good and strong. All right, a couple things about hearings, just quick reminders of things. Do you use a hearing script for your hearings?
We have one within our code of ethics
Yeah.
document of how a hearing is supposed to go.
I think it's good, just have a predictable system. We pride ourselves in informality at local government level, but you don't want to be informal to a fault. you want to announce, have a flow, and particularly if you come to these, knock on wood, maybe you never have one, but if you have a controversial one, you can feel that vibe in the room. Sometimes it's good to help bring the temperature down just right at the beginning, remind everybody, this is the process, this is how it's gonna go. And then everybody's hearing from you, oh, I get it, I'll have my chance to speak, I just need to, cool my heels as a upset audience member here, and this is all gonna go, according to a predictable, fair process. That's a great thing to do. And it shows, builds trust. Make sure we model and expect civility. I apologize for this, though I'm not the culprit. You agree with this notion? Sometimes it feels like there's a rising trend of incivility in this world.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I hope it never visits
You're
you.
not paying attention.
Yeah, but sometimes the job may ask of you that you practice civility even in the face of incivility. You're gonna get an angry citizen for some reason who's just either attacking you or baiting you or what have you, right? But you have the tools to bring that temperature down, right? And if you need to, if it's ever really getting out of control, you always have the power to take a recess. Okay, let's take a recess, let's clear the room and relax a little bit, folks, right? Yeah. And we can always model the behaviors.
Gloves come off.
Yeah.
Gloves are coming off.
You can't bust me taking a nap.
And we can model by our own behaviors. Yet another fun example where this didn't occur many, many years ago when I was attorney for a very small town. The mayor came over the desk at one of his buddies. Not a good way to model civility. Right? But otherwise, even if we have vigorous disagreements with each other, we're going to show the people in the audience that we respectfully disagree. And when we have disagreements, we're agreeing to disagree, and then we're going to move on. Right? That we don't allow our debates to get into the personal, that everyone in our discussions feels like our space here is we're all on an equal playing field. We all have equal opportunity. We're all supportive. If someone makes a personal attack on you, right, that the other members, maybe it's protect the First Amendment speech, but it's still fine to say, hey, our meetings are not for personal attacks. We're a collaborative, supportive community, and we expect that people come to the meeting and, at least try to, commit themselves to our expectations that they behave civilly and professionally. Those are all things you can do.
Can you come
That-
to my next HOA meeting?
HOAs are on a different, they're on a
Never
different
mind.
playing field. All right, so that's all that. Last thing about running meetings, and this is just a reminder, sometimes you have to recalibrate the discussion. And this can come from either inside or outside, right? But if the discussions, the comments, the questioning, we're on the next slide, is straying, some of the recalibration things is, sometimes you might have to remind people that this hearing is not about that issue. Sometimes it'll get momentum where a couple of citizens basically saying, look, this property should have never been zoned for residential. Hey, that ship sailed, that's not our issue. Ours is the certificate of appropriateness, that kind of thing, right? Or they want to introduce outside issues. They go, oh, please don't approve this because it's going to just be, it's going to lead to a few more residents in the town and the school district doesn't have the capacity to handle any more students. Is that within your jurisdiction to handle? No. Right? So sometimes you got to recalibrate people on those kinds of issues. Right? Or the quasi-judicial hearing turned into a legislative debate where, yes, we've identified some reasonable ambiguity in our standards, but now all of a sudden we're talking about changing the standards, and now all of a sudden we're having a policy debate about our standards. Got to get back to, it's unfortunate that we have a somewhat ambiguous standard, but we got to get back to just dealing with the standards that we have, not the ones that we wish we had, right? You can fix that later in the next policy. Yeah. And then lastly, it's same thing, and sometimes applicants, for better or worse, they just want to bring you something that doesn't comply, and it deserves a no. But sometimes in our attempt to be helpful, we want to help reform their application and start telling them, hey, if you do this or you do that, and before we know it, we don't know, barely tell what resemblance it has between what we're talking about now and the original application. So you gotta protect yourselves in that regard. And sometimes if they just need to know and they need to start over, then they've heard what you said. And they'll take into consideration what you said when they start over. But sometimes it's just a case that we gotta make a ruling on the application that we got. And, yeah, we prefer to see something different, but we're gonna rule on the one we got. Okay. I think that's it. On that, yeah, that's it. Just wrapping things up. Remember process, that's why I've spent so much time talking about process. Process for local governments is a product in and of itself. Right? You're not gonna make decisions that are gonna make every 100% of people happy 100% of the time, but even in the most controversial decision, if people walk away from your process and they say, they can even, hey, good for them, they can even say, look, I disagree with the commission decision, but you know what? I feel like it was a good process. I feel like I was heard, I feel like I was respected, I feel like they gave my voice consideration. What a great place to be in terms of faith and trust in the work you do, right? And your legal risk coincidentally goes way down. So, with that, I hope this was all helpful to you. It's great to see you all again.
Thank you.
Always wonderful to get up in the mountains. Still working on getting a remote office up here someday.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah. Any final
As long as you
questions?
didn't hit too much road construction.
No, I left a little earlier because I was worried about Floyd Hill, but they were clear sailing tonight.
Good.
I think we got a little bit of that lull between Labor Day and the leaf peepers, right? Right, that'll all come out probably starting this weekend.
Yeah, they're not here yet.
How have you all been doing with visitor traffic and stuff? We've been hearing from some of the mountain communities that sales tax is down. Visitors are down. You're
Sales
good?
tax is fine for
All
us.
good?
Yeah.
I think ours has actually gone down a little bit based on what I saw.
Yeah.
It's public records, I'm not telling
Right.
anything that isn't known.
You
but,
mean ours, meaning Vale?
Yeah.
I've heard just personal friends that own shops in Vale that they've had their worst season in the history.
But somehow Minturn sales tax seems to be doing fine. So they're spending their money.
Because we're always crappy, so we just keep it a nice, even, low base. And
I think hopefully a lot of our, I mean, that varies establishment to establishment.
It does.
There's a lot of locals here who support what's here.
we don't get the rich Mexico City drug lords coming to Minturn much.
Your short-term rental environment's
working
pretty
on
stable, or?
We tend to stay about 24, between 24 and 28,
Yeah.
but they stay rented as far as I'm aware.
Seems like you've dodged
Just
some
the-
controversy around that stuff.
You want to
So
know something
far.
that's super
So far.
crazy?
We established a 2-year ownership period immediately, without trying to do it after the fact. And we've had several jurisdictions call us being like, why didn't we do that
Why do-
ourselves? Because trying to implement it now would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of the short-term rentals used to be booked months in advance, and now they're more last minute, is what I've seen.
Oh, you know, a little bit of this underground stuff going on, right?
So they're
Put
not
it up for a
booking
little- just a
6
little
months
bit,
in
then take it
advance
down.
anymore.
Yeah. Well,
But they are booking.
AI is gonna catch up with those people.
You're just picking the ones that are registered.
It's a lot easier to put crawlers on the internet and find, and Denver does this, as part of their enforcement, as I understand it, they put crawlers, they have software crawlers that will find ads that are up just, momentarily, and then take it back down off of Airbnb or VRBO, and then, they'll put their enforcement resources on that and say, hey, can't do that.
You want to know something crazy that I've learned based on the net zero and all the sustainability stuff that's come through the valley? Is that Aspen has one of the lowest median household incomes out of all of us. $78,000 is the median household income
For a full-time resident.
for in Aspen. Yeah. Well, it's because you have support staff. That's exactly what it
Because
is.
there's no full-time residents.
Yeah. Yeah. They need us well.
Both of them?
It blew my mind, because they were talking, I was like $78,000, and then it dawned on me, support staff.
Exactly.
Sam, thanks. Your presentation is really clear and very helpful for clarifying what a quasi-judicial difference legislative, I think that's really, really valuable.
I found it helpful to sit through it again too.
Yeah,
You
it's-
know, it just, I hear different things.
Yeah,
And
yeah, as you-
real life scenarios
Good
too are always
reminder.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was good to flex that muscle a little bit.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
So we
Yeah, it was
appreciate it.
really
was
good,
great.
thanks. It could have been boring, but you did a great job of making it interesting.
Because it is, it's easy
A
to
little
get
bit of
behind.
source of swag.
Oh,
You
okay.
got more business to do though, right? Tell you what, I'll just pick some on
Isn't that a
the.
conflict of
Sounds good.
Now we wanna know what the
I'll
swag.
tell you what,
I was kidding.
you're gonna look at your gift rules and this, I hope this thing of tissues is underneath your. And it's also the one and only thing you're gonna get from me this year.
If we can accept under $60.
That's hilarious.
Thanks again.
All right.
Thank you,
thanks.
Sarah.
Thank you. So, Madison, do we have to declare if we receive gifts over $60?
Cannot receive gifts over it. You tell people no.
You're gonna have to send that back.
But-
Thanks.
Yes.
However, if you as a town resident, and this, I asked Michelle about this once, are very pleased with, say, what, when the guys are plowing at the end of season and you want to give them a $20 gift certificate to go out to lunch each, you can do that.
How about an airplane? Is that okay,
Town
Admin?
grounds the Supreme Court, only.
Let's see.
Are you driving back tonight?
I am.
Oh, be
I am.
careful.
I'm a road
Yes.
warrior. Yeah,
Good
Yeah.
the wildlife is what makes me the most nervous.
Yep.
Yeah, me too.
Need more bridges.
Good evening, Rod.
Hi,
Hi.
Hey. how you
In person, yay.
in person, yes, not on the screen. Are you ready for me?
I
doing?
am.
You got perfect timing, Ron.
Yes.
Perfect timing.
Yes, we just finished.
I've been sitting out there for over an hour.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've been in town since 5:30.
Okay.
So I drove 3 hours to get here and I still have a 3-hour drive to get home.
Oh,
So
no.
I'd like to be home before midnight if possible.
Okay.
That is absolutely the goal.
You can stay at my house.
Why don't we get started then?
Yeah, I
Okay,
appreciate
go
that.
ahead.
Okay,
The floor is yours.
thanks.
We do have, we have a couple of new, advisory members. So I think you guys have seen the report and it gives a little bit of context. But this has been an ongoing project. Turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. And
Yeah.
first of all, I want to apologize that I wasn't able to get it into you on Friday in time to be in your packet.
Yeah.
I was still working on it. And I talked with Madison and I needed some time on Friday and Saturday to get this to this point where it's ready for a look at.
Okay.
So Madison was nice enough to forward it on to you. I realize you probably haven't had time to look through it too much.
Oh, yeah. Because no, I did too.
So yes, I mean, I'd like to discuss this with you and see if we can come up with some thoughts on how to proceed with the intensive level survey. I'm gonna start wrapping up this report in the next few weeks, so you should have a final draft ideally for your next meeting to approve. But I'd like to get your comments between now and then on what, if anything, you think needs to be done. Now, I do want to mention, though, that there's a lot more writing I'm going to be injecting into this document. I think it's like 48, 50 pages long right now, and I'll be adding a number of additional pages of analysis to the document. So I have more writing to do.
Will that analysis be on individual properties or more broad analysis?
None of the project is involving individual properties, although I did spend a little time discussing the landmarked properties. But it's a reconnaissance survey, so we're not yet looking at individual properties. That'll come into play in the next phase, which is launching of an intensive level survey. Yeah.
You know what would help me, Ron, is remind us again, sort of where we are in the process and then the intensive, and then what's the,
Sure.
what are we after at the very end of this?
Yeah, that's
Because
great.
that'd be helpful context to where we are today.
You bet. So the reconnaissance survey it's a two-phase project, especially for those of you who are just, a few of you said have just joined the.
Yes, yeah, we have two
New members.
Dan and then
Okay.
one on Zoom.
Just to get you up to speed, it's a two-phase project. The first phase is this reconnaissance survey. That's what you have a draft report of in front of you. And that purpose of that was to take a look at the entire historic core area of Minturn as a reconnaissance, not developing individual histories of individual properties. It's a kind of stepping back and taking a look at the core historic area as a whole. So that involved a lot of buildings. I haven't counted them up, but it's many, many, many buildings. Every building that I looked at is in that document right now in terms of photography, with some of them discussed individually. So that's the whole of it right there, and there's a map in there also showing the boundaries of that project area. And then the second phase is to take 10 of those properties and do an intensive level survey. The intensive level survey will result in individual site forms, one on each property. In fact, I brought one with me to show you. I didn't have a chance to get that out, but I'll pass it around. Maybe you can take a quick look and then pass it on to others here. This is what's called a Form 1403, which is the standard format that's used by the state of Colorado for all intensive level surveys. That's an example of one I did for a building in Fort Collins in the last few years as part of a downtown area survey. And I printed that out just to show you what that 1403 form ends up looking like. And there you'll see that it's taking a deep dive into just one property. And that's what your 10 properties are gonna look like. That's the deliverable for that phase of the project is gonna be 10 of those forms.
So my question is, Ron, is are you gonna help us get to the list of 10?
Yeah, well, that's something we'll talk about here tonight, yes.
Okay, good.
Because we wanna start refining that list, coming to a conclusion about which property those are gonna be.
And then once we have the intensive on 10 properties that you're gonna help us get there, does that conclude, are those the 2 phases?
Yes, that concludes this project.
And we have a grant in place to cover both?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
great, thank you.
Yeah, certified local government grant, which is federal funds that are passed through the State Historical Society.
Right.
State Historic Preservation Office, actually.
But it takes us all the way through.
It takes you all the way through this
Great.
project, right?
Great.
And we have a deadline on the CLG grant of June 1st of 2026, but the project will be done before then. The next phase that we're going into is a lot of work to get those 10 properties documented, which I hope you can see from that site form. That's referred to as a site form. I told Madison recently that I'm probably gonna need it in the first quarter of 2026 to get that done. So in terms of timing, we'll have it done in that first quarter of 2026. But I've already started thinking about that, and we'll be starting to work on that in October as we refine this list, and possibly even in the next few weeks, in terms of what we discussed this evening. And then I'll be working on that continually until that's finished. And in the meantime, I'll wrap up the reconnaissance report that you have in your hands. So you'll see the reconnaissance survey report, like I said, coming in the next few weeks as a final, hopefully what will be a final draft. Yeah, although if you find that there's still something you want to have tweaked on it after early October, that meeting then, I'm happy to continue adding or refining to it. But we will be approaching that point where that phase of the project is going to be close to done. Any other questions about that?
Well, I'm trying to decide whether it's an appropriate question now or at the end of our discussion, but I guess I'll go ahead and ask it now. We make recommendations to council, right? And then council has the final say.
On what?
On, for example, like well, let's say what I'm trying to get to is if we go off and select 10 properties, I don't want to get ahead of council because they may have a different list. How do we deal with that?
So I'm sure Madison will want to chime in on this, but
Yeah.
typically these studies are a product of the Historic Preservation Commission.
Yes.
Okay. They usually don't involve any council activity.
Okay.
Y'all will be the deciders. The History Colorado will be the ones actually approving the list of 10. So they have to concur with the list y'all come up with. But the survey is being drafted per HPC, and then council will just do a presentation to council on the survey at the very end.
as an informative piece.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But these types of projects are never, they're not regulatory, that's probably why, is because they don't involve any restrictions, so typically councils in every city I've ever worked in town has never had to approve these studies.
Okay, okay, well, that's helpful.
Yeah.
All right, thank
Yeah.
you.
This
I'm
is,
glad
this
I
is,
asked about it, we'll worry about it as you talk.
yeah, you guys have the authority here, and it's your work product.
Okay,
The result of your activity is an HPC.
okay.
Yeah. So a couple things that have come from my work on that reconnaissance study that I wanted to relate to you this evening as we start talking about where to go from here. One of which is this book, which we talked about when I first started the project. And as you can see from all these gazillion yellow Post-it notes that I have all over the place in here, I've gone through it. This book is a memoir. It's not a history. It's one person's remembrances of their life growing up in Minturn. That's always a valuable thing to have in any community. However, it's problematic when it comes to the work that I'm doing. I don't know if any of you know this book intimately, but I'm hard pressed, and in fact, I found it almost impossible to locate where these properties are.
That's the
Well, that's the main
problem.
issue with it. You can ask Kelly and I, we know.
Okay,
You have to be a long-term resident of
Yes.
Minturn to know where these properties were.
yep,
Because the way Bill Burnett approached it was, I'm just gonna say this, he remembered things going on in certain houses and commercial buildings and talked at length about families and activities and all those sorts of things, but he never provides an address
correct.
of where the darn building was. And he references each building by its relation to a previous building that he talked about, right?
Mhm.
So if he's talking about the Stevens house, then all of a sudden he's talking about another house
Next door.
across the street and 6 houses down, but he doesn't tell you which house that is or which direction. Also, his sense of direction was confusing to me because he talks about north, south, east, and west in a way that doesn't make sense on the map. So again, this is typical of memoirs, which I come across all the time in my work, that they're very helpful in terms of giving the flavor of a community and the families and the relationships and all that, but they are problematic in that they often don't include exact locations, and they also are usually riddled with historical errors. Because it's, you know, we all have that problem. We misremember things in terms of where they took place in history. So it's a wonderful book, an interesting read, but I'm having a very hard time with the figuring out where these buildings were. So one project I would recommend that needs to be done at some point by somebody here in town. Somebody's got to sit down with this book and figure out where all these places were. It would be
Oh,
tremendous.
it's on my list of things to do.
It's on your list of things to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I applaud anybody who could do that. And I want to ask, are there any old timers left who would know?
And that was, I went through here today, and where there are still people who either were born here or have lived in that building a long time, or are perhaps the past owner of that building that had it for 20 years, I've made notes.
Oh, good.
So that, you know, we might be able to contact them and get questions.
So that's exactly what I was going to recommend, is that as you go through that document, write on it.
And I do like personally have older photos of some of the buildings
Okay.
in my phone. Yeah, some of us know a couple of the older people and have had information.
Yes, and so I was
Passed down
hoping
to
that
us.
might be present still. Now, keep in mind that the older people that are here today wouldn't have any personal reminiscence of what was going on here in the 1920s. Probably not even. You'd have to be
Ella is
100
probably,
years old.
well,
Probably
Ella's
somebody.
98,
There might
and
be
she's
something.
still alive,
Sure,
and she's been a Minturn 76 years.
okay, 76 years.
Yes, but she was in Gilman prior to that,
Okay,
so,
yeah.
yeah.
So that's a rare resource, and
Yeah.
people that age, you know, don't often have their wits about them anymore too,
No, Ella
in
does.
terms of memory.
There's one who's
So
a little bit younger
that's
than her.
something that you guys might want to focus on in some way in the coming weeks and months, is because this would really help the preservation program here. To turn to those older folks, people who've been around here for a long time, to help start to figure out which houses or which that he's talking about here. Because if we can tie those to these buildings, to the actual addresses, then you're starting to put together a more complete history, right? The same with the commercial buildings. It's not, and he talks about public buildings as well, and infrastructure projects and all.
I mean, in my mind, it'd almost be fun to have a presentation and invite everyone and just write down anything on any of the photos that they remember. I mean, I've talked to some people that were, rented some of these buildings, and they have amazing stories. Not necessarily super old stories, but from the 70s about what happened there. And
sure,
those are, to me, like really interesting stories.
You bet. You bet.
For instance, the shed on the top of page 36, we can get great information on that. Possibly the garage on page 34, that's Hawkeye's, that was his family's. So, yeah, there are things like that we can work on.
You know what we did, we had a project that I was involved with, some of these folks know, and one of the first things we did was oral histories, and we actually hired somebody from a museum to actually facilitate, and we got together a bunch of old timers, I think there's about 10 of them around a table, and he facilitated discussion, and we tape recorded it all, and then it was very, very rich, and it was around certain subjects and buildings. And it seems to me we could organize something like that. I don't know who we'd need to have there, but with the idea, the purpose being to fill in the addresses around these stories in the book.
Yeah.
And have it actually professionally facilitated would be ideal.
Yeah.
I think.
That conversation's worth having.
It is. And, honestly, after we did it, we lost several of the really old, the old timers, and we were really glad we did it.
Yeah, we recently lost Ralph Myers, and
I want to talk about that.
I wish I could have.
Agenda about, maybe we take that on.
Steph and I went up and had a meeting with Ella. And she did a bit of it on her phone. She hasn't done anything with it yet, and I took notes. But it was just on Ella and her past in this town.
Yeah.
I've talked to a few other people if they're willing to sit down and talk with us about it, and they said yes, but we haven't gotten to it yet.
Yeah, but I'm thinking we'd actually need to organize it, and
I think what we found, what might be great is to come up with a specific list of questions we could ask each one of them.
Yeah. So I would advise you to keep in mind that the purpose of the Historic Preservation Commission is to be site-based, not just straight history, right? There are museums and the library, archive, and other entities that their focus is primarily on history, okay? What makes an HPC different is that its focus is on sites, the history combined with architecture, combined with sites. It's all site-based. It's not just, let's talk about history stuff that has nothing to do with properties, okay? So it's easy to kind of get lost in the woods as an HPC and end up in the realm of just straight history that has nothing to do with properties. So you always want to make sure, and I was the chair of the commission in Fort Collins for 5 years. I worked with commissions all over Colorado. And I always advise people to keep in mind that you want to stay in that kind of lane of being focused on properties, historic properties of all kinds, historic resources, and not just straight history. So if you end up scheduling a program or a meeting with someone and you end up just talking about family history, for example, which is what a lot of people want to talk about, who was related to who and who married who and all that kind of stuff. You want to make sure that it gets into the nuts and bolts of historic resources.
Right.
Along with that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And having this document is a great way to be able to make a point to the house and say, oh, that was.
Yeah, I was hoping that would help you in your pursuit of that information. Now, that information I don't need for the reconnaissance survey report, all that detail. What this is going to be is about, and I'm going to be adding more information, is about the character of the architecture in town the character of alterations that have taken place to a lot of the buildings, and you've got a slew of altered buildings in this town.
Yes, we do.
I mean, you could probably count on, you know, two hands the buildings that don't look very altered. All the rest of them have been altered with additions, with siding changes, with new dormers, with all sorts of things, everything from mild alterations to extreme alterations. A few of the buildings, I can't even tell if they're historic when you stand there looking at them, because it's like, is this a really historic building, or is this a newer building that looks historic? There were a few, if you look at the table at the end of this document, you'll see a number of places where I have question marks on the ages of the buildings. And several of those, and then in the last column, I mentioned altered. I tried to distinguish between buildings that are just altered and those that have been extremely altered. And that's all based upon just my field look, the field view, knowing architecture of how that building looks today. I can usually see the alterations that are taking place.
So a question, and maybe this is one for the board, is our goal to preserve those buildings that have not been altered? Like the authentic, totally true, or is our goal to preserve a certain character of town, which is still present in some of those altered buildings?
So it's a great question. It's kind of both, in the sense, in the sense that you have some buildings that look just like they would have 100 years ago. And then you also have buildings that were altered during what is now becoming a historic period. For example, in the 70s. I imagine that once Vail got going, and I'm sure it's the case, and you had workforce housing taking place in Minturn, that people wanted to improve the houses as the houses were turning over, and commercial buildings too. They were turning over to a new generation of owners. I've seen this in a lot of not ski towns, but adjacent to ski towns, the adjacent communities where the workforce housing ends up living, that there ends up being a generational turnover that occurs during the first 10, 20 years of a ski resort development. And then people come in and they're like, I don't want to live in this house that was built in 1885 and doesn't have a bathroom, or the kitchen is too small, or we've got 3 kids and we need another bedroom. So you see all of a sudden this rash of additions taking place and alterations taking place. Sometimes it's also that a salesman came through town selling asbestos shingles for the exteriors of the house, and you end up with transite shingles all over the buildings on the exteriors. So those alterations in themselves can be treated as historic changes that reflect a certain period of time. So I hope that answers your question.
And then in addition to that, with the confusion that arises from alterations, is it your sense that our goal should be, when we're approving someone's proposal for new alterations to a historic building, should they try to remain consistent, or is it actually better if they are distinctly different from the building so that it's not confused?
Another great question. The rule of thumb is always to have the addition be sensitive to the original architecture, or the existing, but be clearly, visibly different, so that it's recognizable when somebody like me comes along 30 years from now. They're going to look at it and go, oh, I can see that they put an addition off the side of the building.
So you don't want to blend it in.
Yes.
As like
But it's
almost
in keeping.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's-
But you respect the original architecture by the massing, the scale, the placement of where that addition goes. Like tuck it to the back of the house, or you put it to the side and set it back on the lot.
Sure.
But it's also interesting, like a cathedral in Europe that took 600 years to build, they changed the style of architecture as they went up because they were trying to do the most latest innovations at the time, even though today most people think it's one piece of architecture.
Yeah, that is interesting. And there's also a change in cost. You know, the cost of making new additions can go way up after 200 years than what it was earlier. And the skilled trades that were around, for example, lath and plaster work.
Yeah.
Who does that anymore? You'd have to hire
Technology.
You'd have to hire workers from Mexico to do that work, because nobody in the United States does lath and plaster work anymore, or even plaster work in many cases.
Not out here anyway.
Yeah.
I come from the South.
You can get it there?
Yeah, we've got folks that can go back and do the horsehair plastic.
That's great, yeah, here it's harder to find,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, so this is one piece of it, is just, as you're thinking about where you wanna take those 10 properties in the next phase, is looking at this report and scanning through it over the next week or two, whatever, you know, the next few weeks, and thinking about what you might want to highlight for those 10 properties, okay? It could be that you're going to want to say, well, let's just try to knock out the ones that are pretty darn intact from the early years of Minter and get those documented before they get changed. It helps you to get ahead of the game before those alteration permits come in.
It might be a little late, but.
It might be a little late, yeah. I realize that.
I think also, I think one of the things about this town was this was the workers' town, so
Yeah.
it's not like, you know, Leadville downtown or something where we get these massive
Right.
stone structures or something.
More
You know,
modest
these were
construction.
modest people doing modest construction. And.
But,
you
and
know,
which there's nothing wrong with, of course.
nothing wrong with it, but it's, it creates a bit of a challenge.
Makes it hard to
for
gauge.
us. Huh?
It makes it hard to gauge.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I feel like this is the kind of place where you build things from the resources that you had at hand.
Yeah.
And so and I've also noticed too that materials out here can like blasted for 200 years and they're only like 70 years old versus what I'm accustomed to back home. You know, things out here can look a lot older than they truly are.
Especially in the mountains
Oh, yeah.
with the weather
Because of the
extremes.
weather, you mean?
Yeah.
Just,
And the material, and the lack of quality material probably.
Yes. At the same time, we don't have the humidity you have in the south.
no,
And we don't have termites.
but it's just, like, if you were to go in and look, you kind of have to look at like, you know, even the nail materials, like the iron. I don't think that it would be a definitive way to date something because.
The two types are the blacksmith made and then the wire cut.
You know, based upon your available resources, you may have to just do whatever you had to do. It's
Yeah.
like back home if you go to Appalachia,
Yeah,
you know, you've got people, you look at a picture from 1930 and think it's 1870.
yeah.
It's just weird.
People had to be scrappy, and the same in a railroad town like this
Yeah,
in the earlier years.
they do.
So when you've done this before, cause I know you've done this before.
Yeah.
So when we're at this stage, how do we get to 10? What's the best process?
I wanna make one recommendation to start. I mean, I'm probably not gonna be a popular guy after I walk out of here with this.
Okay.
You recognize this document,
Yes.
this
Yeah.
format? You guys have 5 properties that are discussed in this reconnaissance survey report that have been landmarked already. This is your landmark nomination form, okay? And I've looked at Madison sent me all the material on these 5 properties. I don't know if you have more material sitting in a file folder that wasn't digitized, but what you did send me was what I was able to look at. And these are very thin documents. There's hardly any information in here that you're basing these landmark designations on.
Was that our original that he has? That's the only one we've ever had?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this can work just fine if it's done in tandem with a site form like the one I just passed around.
Right.
In other words, where's all the research that was supposed to be done to provide the justification for landmarking these properties? I mean, in-depth research.
Right.
When you landmark a property, that's supposed to be a deep dive into that property. And I didn't see it on any of the 5. So, I'm concerned about that because I think that you guys need to you got like the cart before the horse, maybe the best way to put it. You got the landmarking done before you did all the deep dive research and analysis of the architecture. And so I want to recommend that you get these 5 properties done as the first 5 of this intensive level survey so that you are caught up to speed. And then you have that done so that everything from that point on is gonna have to have one of those site forms done to get landmarking taken care of. That's the way it should have been done from the start, ideally.
So wait, go back in and enhance those,
Yeah.
is what you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
with the site form,
Right.
not with one of these again. You can leave it landmark, but you're gonna wanna have that site form done on each one of these properties. I would advise you to not go forward with any more landmarking until you start a process like that to make sure you've got adequate information to justify the landmarking. Otherwise, you're landmarking properties that you don't necessarily have justification to landmark. I mean, you
Is
can
that for
landmark
legal
whatever, let me
reasons?
rephrase it, you can landmark whatever you want.
So I think
You're the town of
But
Minter.
what is your,
It's-
is it predominantly, are you saying that for legal reasons or just historic? I mean, not just historic.
There's a standard way of doing this work that's used nationwide,
Okay.
which is that anytime you're gonna landmark a property, whether it's on the local, state, or national level, you really have to investigate that property fully. You wanna take a look at the existing architecture, try to figure out what it originally was, what's been altered and when. Even if those are just estimates of the alterations, without building permits. When did the town start issuing building permits?
A couple of years ago.
It's in recent years, probably.
I even tried to find.
So you're not gonna
sample
find
maps.
building permits on these buildings.
But I just know
But you
that
can-
Eagle County a lot, I was diving into Red Cliff, some building history, and it gets to a point where, like, you can't even read the handwriting, what was in the ledgers, and just the way they're
Typically-
organized it's really difficult.
Where would the wills and things been logged back in the day?
Hold on a second, wait a second, go ahead.
So I've been trying to make the point that, back to my initial question about, is it more about preserving historic integrity of buildings, or is it more about the character of the town? And I think where this commission got started was more in the latter, that it's more about the character of the town, which is a little more loosey-goosey than this intensive historic basis for every decision made. But it does raise the question, like, legally, are we getting into hot water if we don't have that support?
I wouldn't say it's a legal issue. I'm not an attorney, but I don't see any kind of legal
If
issue.
we see a building as significant, if the commission decides it's significant, whether we've done the research or not, we've made that decision, that's adequate.
Right, but if that property turns over, and it will, to a new owner, and the new owner says, I don't like the fact that the HPC has any review authority over changes I wanna make to this house, they'll get hold of this form, and any attorney's gonna look at this, the record of that property and say, this is inadequate to justify the landmarking of this building, and we want it reversed. That does happen. I've seen that happen many times, where people push back against the landmarking on a property. And if the town itself, the city itself, doesn't have an adequate record of what the decision-making was based upon, then people are just gonna have the decisions reversed. So, I mean, that's where the legal, I don't know if
It
that's
gets
a
back
legal
to the
question.
presentation we had earlier this evening, like, if there aren't standards that are specifically referenced as the reason for the landmarking, then there's no basis for it.
Exactly.
That judicial decision hasn't been supported.
That's right.
But does that not then, okay, so a couple things. When this application, were we not counseled on what we needed in the application?
Well, the application form itself mirrors exactly what the code requires.
Right,
So, and
As far as our code goes, we have satisfied it.
as far as our code goes,
that's where I
yes,
was going with
we have
this.
satisfied it.
According to our current code,
Right.
that application satisfies
Now,
it.
per Ron's extensive experience with historic preservation, in our extremely limited experience with historic preservation, I mean, on a surface level, the criteria have been satisfied. But I think what Ron's saying is that based on his experience, and unfortunately, y'all are getting the 27-year-old never done any kind of historic stuff heading you, which probably has some issues. But
We're learning together.
we're all learning together.
Yeah.
But so far, nobody's tried to fight the designation after the fact. If we've had an instance of somebody fighting the designation while it's going through the nomination process, but nobody's tried to come in and be like, no, we changed our mind, we don't like this. So I certainly, I mean, Ron's been doing this a long time. So if he says, hey, we need to beef up what we've either received or what staff has put together as part of whatever nomination it was of the 5. I certainly encourage you to take his advice.
Well, let me say, this would probably fall into the realm of best practices in this field. And as an HPC, you know, you want to engage in best practices. And this is not like something that's state of the art that's coming down the pike. This is something that communities have been doing for many, many years.
Small communities. like
Small
ours.
communities as well as large, yep, yes,
And we just readopted the federal standards, so.
yeah. So that's why I'm advising that, and I don't want to, I'm not trying to criticize anything that Madison has done or you guys have done.
No, yeah.
This form is perfectly fine, like I said earlier, but it needs to be backed up by more substantial documentation every time. And Madison is a planner. She's not expected to be a historian. She did what she could with it, I'm sure, the best she could.
Trying.
Yeah. So again, it's not meant as any kind of criticism. I just kind of want to help you guys get to
Right.
where you want to be as a preservation commission.
So if a property is nominated and then it's under consideration for designation, who does that burden fall upon to produce one of those reports for each property? Is it the owner, is it the town? And that's a significant burden because it is, I presume each one of those reports is a significant amount of time.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm gonna get ahead of myself here a little bit, but I appreciate your point about we need to have these 5 that have already been designated brought up. But with the limited resources we have at the moment, those are sort of a done deal. I'd sort of say we should just go forward with what are the next 10 and do it right with them. These are sort of already taken care of. But back to my question, who would normally be paying for that research?
In a lot of communities, what they'll do is they will either ask the property owner to carry the cost. They'll just say you have to have this done as a requirement of landmarking the property. Or in some
Even if
cases,
it's not up, or even if he didn't want it.
Yeah, what
Right.
if he's
See, this is the problem
opposed to-
is-
What if he's opposed to
if the
it?
property owner is opposed to the landmarking,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's something you only want to do in an extremely rare instance.
Yeah.
I mean, extremely rare. That's got to be a property that's of such great public value that you have to feel that the majority of the public, of the town's residents, will be behind going over the property owner's head.
Well, we do have instances with our land value up here where it's much easier for a developer just to bulldoze a building and build max out square footage and all that, so it's
For
kind
instance, 2 of these buildings are already gone.
Oh, are they, since I looked at them?
Yes.
and that's kind of what led to some of this, is just because from a Florida developer's viewpoint, it's just easy just to bulldoze everything.
Oh, yeah. This is going on all over the state.
Yeah, Denver's having
Every
issues with
community,
it,
except for
Colorado
way out-
Springs.
Except for way out on the eastern plains, every community in the state of any size is suffering from the same thing.
And I would say, like, the water tower project, it's not really a controversial
No,
thing. I would love to have more information, but there's no, it's a utilitarian building. It's not like there's a family history there.
And the town owns that, and the town's not going to.
And
figure
along
it
with the
if they
Myers
want to.
barn
Can
and,
we figure out who built it and see if they built other things similar throughout the state? Like, does that guy have a reputation for building these kind of things? Is this something special that pertains to that individual or that company?
So that's something that can come up during the research of the property.
which there's stuff like bridges that I know there's a whole book on the bridges of Eagle County and.
I got it.
Yeah,
I got a
Yeah,
copy.
and some of them are, it's interesting to see certain bridge styles do have a history to them.
What you've raised is a massive concern because I would posit that there are very, very few owners that want their property historically designated. There are a few perhaps, but the vast majority of properties, probably everything that you have on this list, just about, most people don't want it to be designated because they don't want to be constrained or they think it's going to reduce their property value, they think it's going to be more burden to develop it. If they want to do an addition, if they have to spend another $5,000 for a historic record that they didn't ask for, they're going, like, this is the thing, it's.
So
It gets back to my point about like, I think the goal was like, oh, how do we preserve the character enough without necessarily going whole hog that it burdens
right.
property owners?
It's definitely a balancing act, cause I think Telluride has done an amazing job, but when you talk to people that live in Telluride and they're like, my God, this is a pain in the ass, you can't even tear down an outhouse,
Yeah.
you know?
But
But
there are a few communities that are like that. It's usually the wealthier ski towns. You know, Aspen's like that. Crested Butte is like that. I just drove here from Crested Butte today because I'm doing a survey project there. But those are few and far between. Most communities are not as restrictive as those three places I just mentioned.
And their building stock is of a different character, different quality to begin with.
Well, I mean, Crested Butte is not. It was a coal mining town.
Yeah.
And they've got a lot of really kind of run-of-the-mill houses in that town that were put up by coal miners.
Mhm.
So even though the town now has a very different character to it because of the ski area, the housing stock there is in many ways similar to what you've got here.
well, you had that
Except
one,
that those houses now cost $4 million, you know?
I mean, you have that one little coffee shed that has all the license plates in
Yes,
Crested
I
Butte.
just had
It's
coffee
just
this
a
morning.
basic shed, but it's one of the most photographed things.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a rusty car in town that is just a ball of rust, and it's the most photographed thing we have. It's,
So,
huh?
so one of the,
I'd love to.
one of the things I would bring up is that, in response to your comments, is preservation commissions are not all about landmarking properties. And I just had the same discussion with the Preservation Commission in Colorado Springs, of all places, because their whole focus has been on, what are we gonna landmark, what are we gonna landmark? It's not all about landmarking properties, it's also about getting studies like these done of the community, and
Preserving the
increasing
history.
understanding and therefore appreciation of the historic built environment. That's also what you're here to do, not just landmark properties here left and right. You're right that a lot of properties, most properties in any community are never gonna be landmarked. And they don't necessarily have the quality that'll be worthy of landmarking. If you set up a historic district here, you can landmark everything within the historic district. Every building within that historic district would be landmarked as part of that district. That's the way to get to that. When you have a lot of very working class historic housing involved. But when you've got individual landmarks that you're looking at, very few of these properties, of course, are gonna come forward as potential landmarks. These two little houses, the Nelson houses, in most communities, those would never be landmarked.
So if you're saying, were we able to landmark a larger area, then instead of trying to focus on the individual attributes of each house, we
Yeah.
could say, this represents Minturn.
Yes,
And everything within this circle, we want to preserve as it is, or if
as
we can
best as
find a
possible,
better,
yeah. And that's what Crested Butte's done, that's what a lot of other towns have done, is they drew a line around a boundary around that core area, which is the same line that we're probably using.
What was
in this
the
response?
response when they did that from the homeowners?
Well, they did it a long, long, long time ago.
I mean, I'm trying to picture us doing that now.
Everything should have been done a long time
Go to
ago.
the spring back lynching, you know?
Yeah, you know, so in the
Tar and feather.
Tar and feather.
It depends on-
As my house gets burned down.
depends on the
It would be
populace of
good.
Minturn, you know, I mean, this is, we're going through a more conservative era where private property rights have risen to the fore more than ever before, so it depends on how you view the population. You'd have to poll them. It's not something you would impose on the community, but you would talk to the community and listen to them and see if there's enough support for that. No landmark district ever has had 100% support.
Yeah.
You just have to get a majority, a simple majority, and everybody has to live with it then.
See, I don't know what the ratio is to
I'm trying to think of anybody.
cash poor, house rich is. You know what I mean? Because there's people that have been in the valley for a long time that own properties, but they're not wealthy.
No.
They just manage to hold on to them and pay the taxes every
Right,
time.
right.
When you start to try to draw properties into a historic district, you start to impose, you know, financial burdens upon them if they want to improve upon that
It
structure.
depends on what the code, the municipal
Yeah.
code.
How far we
says.
go with it.
Yes, it can be restrictive, it can be very light.
Yeah.
It can be more encouraging than it is restrictive.
I think that's.
In other words,
That's what we're trying to.
you're best off any community is best off focusing primarily on incentives rather than restrictions, anywhere.
Right.
Nobody likes to
The
have
only
anybody
ince-
tell
that's,
them.
that raises another important issue, because as a town, the only incentive, we have really no incentive.
Well, we can't use money as
We
an
don't have
incentive,
money.
which.
Right. We tried to propose some zoning benefits, but
Mhm.
that didn't fly. And so the only thing we can offer is, hey, you can go for tax credits. And then, and
But
then
only if you
Grants.
remodel.
what that
Yeah.
does is then they go, I'm terrified of having to deal with all the requirements.
And the red tape.
And so essentially, we have no
Because it
incentive.
goes beyond us and it has to be reviewed at state level at that point.
Yeah.
Correct?
And then commercial property owners, it's a different ballgame, because they can get grants.
I was gonna say grants are the
Yeah.
way to just to commercial, not to residential.
Like,
But I don't think
like
on
the Tabor.
one-family dwellings, they'll
Wait,
give you
say
that
that again?
20%. I don't think you can get that for residential.
For
It's like-
Fed, on the Fed, you can get,
Can
you
you?
can get tax credits for houses, yes.
If
tax
it's like my
credits.
personal house.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But grants would only be
Not
available for
grants.
commercial properties,
Yeah.
or publicly owned resources.
So we have no incentives, and then we have a town that just wants to save a few, that this all started when a very prominent, beautiful building
Cute.
downtown, old building, that
Right.
everybody liked, it was voted the #1 building in town, everybody liked. Well, you told the story, and it was bulldozed overnight.
Yeah, so when I moved here in '03, I remember as a town, we did a town survey and people could vote on the three buildings that they liked the most. And it wasn't necessarily historic. And the three prettiest, cutest buildings, however you,
Character,
it was written, and the three ugliest.
Okay,
And so the last owner was Pope's Bike Shop, the Mountain Peddler. But it was a stained glass studio before it, and I don't know what it was before, but it was red with lots of gingerbread detailing, and our local artist painted it all different colors along with many other buildings. But the people voted as the #1 cutest building in town. The Battle Mountain Trading Post was #2. And then the the Minturn Inn was recently remodeled, and it was one of the first major buildings to get an uplift in the 90s. And people liked that, but they kind of preserved the look and the feel of what this town was. And then they also voted the three ugliest buildings, and we had just torn down a bunch of wooden cabins along the river, and the Eagle River Enclave got built, which is 4-story high condos or apartment condos, I guess they are, that are just a block of stucco going up 4 stories, and that was voted the ugliest building in town, along with a utility building that's owned by Century Link.
so is
And,
that, the one that I have in there is in fact
I think
a
it's different.
telephone switch
Yeah.
equipment building, yeah.
But not that one, it was a different building.
This-
Oh,
a different one.
We have another one,
So the one that's standing down the street here though.
So anyways,
it's the back of
but
501,
Yeah. Yeah.
But the one that was voted the most ugly is a newer one further down Boulder Street.
okay,
And it's
okay.
it has a better roof on it.
it's
Oh,
Bit
yes,
uglier.
But the one on 501 was a utility building.
it was a telephone, probably a telephone
yeah.
switching
And
equipment,
it's, yes, concrete block, and
yeah, stucco on these two.
yeah. So my neighbor owns that one. But and then I'm trying to remember.
The point, I guess the point of all this was that, that's the genesis of all this was, don't ruin the key.
The character.
Let's not lose anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And people come here because of a few cute buildings, really.
Yeah.
Right.
so
And the
what
more,
our-
if we lose that few core cute ones that have a little bit of detail left from Sears siding,
so I,
taking everything
so
out,
we use the
like
term
we,
cute, and I understand, the people respond well to architecture that appeals to them aesthetically, right? You look at it, you say, oh, that's a nice looking old Victorian house, or I really like the cornice and all this work on the top of this commercial building. It appeals to us. And
Every
especially
person's-
when kept up well, or if they've aged, if they have some patina to them, you know, like you go into Ashcroft or some of the, or Independence, some of the ghost towns, and you look at buildings, and even though they're run down, it appeals to us, right? What people have a hard time connecting with are buildings that they think are just ugly, okay, where they don't like the addition that was done, or somebody enclosed the front porch or whatever. So I'm getting back to that site form, because what connects people to those buildings that are rather mundane buildings, and even the ones that are nicer, are the stories behind them.
So what's most important?
Nobody's ever gonna wanna save any of them. They're just houses that can be torn down at any time and replaced with newer 4-story, you know, apartment buildings or whatever.
Yeah, because they were like one-room little log cabins, you know, probably 500 square feet, but people loved them.
So what
And
was the
they
story
got pissed
behind
once they got torn down.
You know, Bill Burnett tried to tell the stories. He did tell stories behind a lot of these places, but we don't know where these places exactly were.
Well, for instance, the two downtown that you said probably wouldn't be are in there. That's the Nelson family.
Yeah,
And those were the two brothers, and across the street was the mom and dad at the Helen's house.
And they were finding
And
fathers.
they were dairy farmers, and they were because of our lettuce here and things like that. Those do have that history.
I get it, but the history has to be tied to this nomination.
Yeah.
And it's not there.
It was in my application. Well,
I mean,
no,
when-
I didn't do those, did I?
You know what the buildings were. There's a little bit in here, but what is it tied to? There's no references, it doesn't say what it was, where's this information from? This is not history, this is just a collection of some common knowledge, some of which may be correct, some of which may be mistaken. You'll see when I do these site forms for you, I'm gonna go do title searches. Nobody does title searches on historic properties. Hardly anybody does, because it's a lot of work and it's complicated research, very complicated. The first thing I always do in communities where there aren't other written documents available is I go do a title search on the house. Those two Nelson houses, I want to see what the ownership chain was on those buildings. When did the Nelsons acquire them? I've had people tell me this kind of stuff before, and then I go do the research and look what I found. This was never owned by the Nelson family. Yet everybody's talking as if it was. I've had that happen on many occasions.
So where do you go here for so let's say the town of Minturn, let's say I wanted to go look at records of wills. I wanted
To the
Eagle
county
County.
clerks.
Is
county
it Eagle
clerks.
County? So
Eagle.
at that time, Eagle County was
Yeah.
in effect
Oh,
and
yeah.
it was taking care of all that
Oh,
stuff.
yes.
So you have to know who the owner is now, when the sale was of that property. In the ledgers,
Trace it backwards.
you go through the names until you see that name again. So
Yeah,
I have a house in Red Cliff, 1880 log cabin. So I did it as well as I could. It
Okay.
took me all day.
so you know how much
But
work.
in the process of, because it's not easy, because you just have to search through a name in the ledgers, and it's just all chronological when something's sold. And you have to go year after year and oh, there's that name, and you find out who owned the house before that,
Right.
and then you have
And they
to
start
find
searching
out
for that
who
name.
sold it to them again. So I ended up finding out that the history of all my neighbors too, because you're just looking for certain names, and then to me it was fascinating because I learned that my house was a lady owned it back in the 30s, which I thought was very unusual, but her husband owned like 24 properties, which made my search harder because
Yeah,
I
right.
kept seeing that name, but he must have been very wealthy, but then for some reason his wife or daughter's name was on it. And to me, that was like, what's the story behind that?
Yes, right.
And I don't know how you get that story unless you read through the newspapers and the little
Yes,
gossip
and see,
section.
once I have that chain of ownership, then I've got the names that I'm gonna be able to research, okay?
Yeah.
So, the Nelsons, I'm not saying that it's not the Nelson houses, I'm just saying that I've seen that happen many
Yeah.
times where the common knowledge turns out to be incorrect.
Well, some of that passing on in sales can be on the property cards too, can't it?
The property cards, which property cards?
From Eagle County.
So, it depends on what property cards you're talking about.
Well, the ones for the downtown, I have some of them at home that we were given when we were starting to do this historical
So it
society.
depends on whether you're talking about title records
And it's a picture of the
Tax-
property and it tells you when it was built, who owned it.
Okay, so that's
What
the tax
additions have been to
assessors, those are
Yeah,
tax
okay.
assessors cards.
Okay,
And I can tell you that all these years that are in here, years of construction, these are remarkably precise, which is interesting. Usually what I find is a lot of them, in a lot of other counties saying 1900, 1890, 1910, you know, in other words, they're guessing. It's a
Right.
guesstimate.
Yeah.
These are saying 1947, 1936, 1928. These are very specific,
Specific dates.
which is unusual, because often the assessor's records are wrong in terms of date.
Well, I noticed.
Ron, if I can interrupt for a second, I just want to think about the time that we have left.
Yeah.
I want to think about what does success look like tonight, and are we getting there?
Great
Are we
idea.
getting to where we need to
Yeah.
get tonight? Because you've driven 3 hours, you got another 3-hour drive. And we want to make sure that we use this time wisely. So what does success look like tonight? What have we not done that we need to be doing tonight?
Okay, so I just want to ask you to take a look at the reconnaissance survey, right?
Right.
And get back to me, and I suppose Madison did too, with any comments you have in terms of if you see some big errors in there or things you want to question. And also, if you know a little something about an individual building that you're sure about, let me know about that too, okay?
I just have one, and I don't think it's that big a thing, but at 482 Main,
I saw that.
that was the rectory for the Catholic Church.
So I need you to send me something about that.
But you also have in here that it's now a restaurant. It is not.
Which is next door.
That's next door.
482 Main?
Yes.
So
Is that
you'd
one of the
like,
commercial-
so if we see anything like that, you'd like us to,
You need to let me know.
Yeah, let us
Send me
know.
an email,
yeah, send you an email.
because I won't remember
But in
otherwise.
terms of like tonight, is a goal to try to come up with like our 10 or?
We don't have to have the 10 tonight.
Okay,
This is
so-
basically to launch that effort to come up with the 10.
would it be
I do
helpful-
want you to seriously consider these 5. I
Right.
get what you're saying, but I really think that you ought to be,
Hybrid.
these are landmark properties. You
Well, it
should
could
have
be that maybe,
full,
maybe we don't do all 5, is what I heard.
why
from
not get the
group.
state to pay for all 5 of those? You've got
Well,
state money
because
here.
we want to use the state money to find the others.
Okay,
But I'm not saying.
I would
that-
think about it.
I'm just personally, what I'm saying is that maybe I don't want to do that on the water tower.
Oh,
And,
yeah,
you
which
know,
is fine.
You know, and maybe I don't want to do it on the Myers barn. I don't know. And then maybe we spend our money on that.
That Myers barn is still a major mystery to me.
Yeah.
I'm friends with the Myers. Ralph died, but I still have his wife's information, and I keep trying to get her to give me more information than what
Yeah.
Ralph told me. So, but I still have her contact, and she's still alive in Arizona right now.
Okay.
So,
Would it be helpful if maybe amongst us, we picked out a couple dozen properties that we think are the most
right.
eligible for even the more in-depth, maybe not for the 10, but
Mm-hmm.
if as a group, we sort of say, oh, these are the ones we think are most important to town.
Yes.
Regardless of the historic, we don't know, but like, in terms of that character thing, which ones really seem to,
Absolutely, absolutely. Please do that.
yeah, maybe that'd be a good thing for
Are
us.
you suggesting that we do that tonight?
No, I'm suggesting that that we all think about it.
Yeah.
Look through these and then maybe nominate, whatever, make a suggestion, maybe each send an email to Madison with the 20 or so properties that you think are significant.
And then I can
And you-
then kind of find the overlap
The
between,
overlap.
hopefully, the
Yeah.
overlap between all of y'all. I mean, we're not having the October meeting, cause I'll be out of the country, so if y'all could work on that over the next few weeks, I could get that information to Ron. We can kind of discuss
Yeah.
ourselves, get approval. I'll send the final list to y'all to make sure nobody has any glaring issues. And then we'll send that to Lindsay at the state for her approval.
She's just gonna rubber stamp it. She won't care. She just wants to know that you got a list.
That I've got a list.
And I'd also like Ron's feedback, like, say we come up with 20 or so, maybe you could then give us some feedback on.
Of these 20,
Well,
here's
these
the
20,
10.
these are the, he'd recommend, and then we'd have another response back.
Right.
And in terms of criteria, which ones are maybe the most important historically? In terms of their function in the town, or who they were associated with, that you believe they were associated with? And also, I guess you could focus on buildings that you think look like they have some really good integrity. You know, in that table at the end, I mentioned some of the ones that have really good decorative Victorian detailing, or if there's a blank, that means it didn't look altered to me.
So blank is not, I had lack of information is that it doesn't.
I didn't really have anything negative to say in terms of that
So
it's
the
been really
blanks are actually the
altered.
most significant ones.
Mostly intact, yeah, as far
When
as
you
I
say
can tell.
integrity, do you mean structural, like they're willing to still stand the test of
Design
time? Or do you
integrity.
mean,
Oh,
or do you mean not?
integrity meaning, architectural integrity is a phrase we use to mean that the building still looks much like it did originally.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Well, at what point do we move forward and we discover which ones are
No, but
actually economically feasible to
that one's one of the.
restore, refurbish, or what, you know what I mean? Cause some of them, they may be awesome looking on the outside, but they may be junk when it
So
comes to
that's really up to the individual property owner.
So they're gonna have to provide us with.
They have to be the drivers of that. Although an HPC can encourage that if you want to do outreach. You can reach out to property owners and say, hey, through our work that we're doing, we've identified that your property is really important because of such and such. That's, you know, these site forms will help you do that. Because you hand that form to a property owner, some of them are gonna go, oh shoot, I can't believe this, you know, I've got this property now that turns out to be significant, but some of them are gonna read that and go, my God, I didn't realize this had this history to it. And that may change their whole perspective in terms of keeping the building standing, but also restoring. Some of them may say, maybe we should take the facade back to what it originally looked like, instead of, you know, this Frankenstein of a facade that's on there now or whatever.
Ron, can you remind me what 100 block on Main Street you went through that we had covered, that we asked for?
How far south?
Looks
would
like
we?
700.
Yeah, that's right.
Is not
Just
the Minturn
cemetery.
in one of those homes? Because it's not in here, and I would think that would be one.
They're like the 400 something.
Cause I know it was, I think 1917 or 14 was when that was built.
This list was based upon the properties that I recorded were based upon the county assessor's list of ages of the properties.
I know Minturn Inn was like 1917 or 14, so it would.
Which one is that? do you think?
Where's the mention?
It's not in there.
It's right next to Kirby's, I think.
You know, just directly across from the chicken.
It goes
Marco
all the way
has
to
it?
the, it used to go all the way to the.
Because that was Polly's parents' house. When she moved down from Gilman down to here, her parents owned it. Now Polly has passed, and the house on the corner was Polly's, but that's been totally resided and added onto. And that was one of the oldest ones, but I don't think the Minturn Inn had that much change done to it.
No.
And I know who worked on that, and we can find that out.
What would the address be?
I'm looking.
Minturn Inn?
Give me a sec.
By the way, here's another mystery to me, the Minturn Country Club.
Yep.
Oh my
So
God.
if you go inside, you can see
You'll
some of the
understand.
original walls.
Stone walls.
Yeah,
So if
so
you
they
look
took
at-
the second
If
story
you look
off.
at on page 12, the two photos, the current
Yeah.
and the historic,
So if you go inside, they do have the original stone wall in
so
there.
here's the question I have. And this wasn't clear the way, you know, all the information I found out about it. The building that was the two-story, everything says that they took off the second story. But when you look at the building that's there today, and you look at the building if you look at the building on the right, the way it originally looked, to the left of it, there was a one-story stone building. It looks like it was an addition to the original Minturn Mercantile. And I'm wondering if what's actually standing there today is that one-story building and the building to the left of that.
Oh.
And then the two-story building was totally taken down and is now the parking lot next to the Minturn
First
Country
Street.
Club.
Interesting.
I still, this is a question for me, and again, the title research is probably gonna answer that question.
Well, if you,
Which
like I
wall?
said, you do see the huge masonry wall when you go in to eat.
Sure, but that could have been part of that
442.
adjacent.
And then in between that and the Nelson houses, I do have a photo from the 50s showing a clothing store and a post office, I believe.
Yeah, there was a post office in that stretch, that's
Yeah.
right. I
which,
did read about that and figured out that
but I do have a photo of that in my,
Yeah, and if
from
you
Eagle
look
County.
at that old picture of the 101 Main Street, you can see there is a building, you're just seeing just the very corner of it, which might be that shed portion to the right of the 131 photo.
What page is that?
Page 10, there's a picture of Agusto's, and then you can see just to the left, almost right next to it, there's another building next to that tower that looks like a telephone pole.
Yeah.
And we do have some postcards that.
And then if you go to the one on page 12 of Mercantile, there's a shed type roof to the right of it.
Well, anyway,
And
Ella would be
there are all
one to
these
ask that
mysteries.
and
question.
there's a telephone pole right there.
Ella would be one to ask that too.
the town is full of mysteries that need to be solved.
Yes.
Minturn Inn is 442 Main Street.
Okay.
442, and it's not on here.
It's not in the
So
pictures.
it didn't appear then in the assessor's records with the date that was that old. We got dates through, what did we decide?
442.
50 years ago?
Years ago. Well,
75.
60 years?
we initially started at 75
75.
years, which,
And then I think I added 10, so I think we did
yeah,
65 years or older.
so that we would have the little buffer period.
Yes, right.
The assessor says the actual year built is 1903, so theoretically it should have been in that spreadsheet, but I'm not saying the assessors didn't miss it, so.
Well, do send me an email, I'll check on
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm happy to add that.
So listening to all of this, did you summarize what our assignment is?
It's
What would be
to,
most
I like the
And
idea of you
mine's a
guys
bit-
coming up with a list of, maybe, I wouldn't try to do more than 20.
Right.
Because we do need to get it down to 10.
Yeah.
So if you each come up with a list of,
And what would we ask ourselves in coming up with that?
well, that's what I was saying is, is it something that you already believe has some significance in town? Because it was a certain, like the Williams Motel building, or something else that is known.
Nelson's,
A known building in town.
Well, we also have, and my friends own both of them, but one was the Masonic Lodge, and next door to it was our hospital.
Yeah, where were those? I don't know.
I don't know either.
It's right on
Again.
Main Street.
So this is,
It's,
I think,
I don't know what page.
It is a
What's
group.
in here?
We could
Yeah,
do
I
that.
made that.
Yeah, I
Because that
know.
would be a meeting.
Well, look, even if each of you comes up with 5 properties that you think would be priorities.
But I mean, I would love to be.
200 block. of
Well, you guys can
Main Street.
talk about
Page
it.
23. So on page 23, the bright yellow house was the Masonic Lodge, and it still has a secret room in there.
23, which address?
262.
Oh, it's on the upper left, that house.
And they eventually moved to Leadville. The
And the Evening Stars are
Masons.
still up there.
Yeah.
And then the 272
Looking at
was.
that building, how would you ever know that was
Yeah.
Masonic?
Because it used to have the insignia on it before it got sold and people took it off.
But it looks,
When
but it's a
when I moved
residential,
here 40-some years ago,
it's a residential style building now.
Leadville, the people in Leadville might know. And then 272 was our hospital.
Really?
And I was part of the remodel on that years ago. And I actually have a medical journal from 1915 or 17 that the rats had kind of eaten most of it, but I kept.
Yeah. So, look, these are prominent buildings because of those uses. I mean, the building that was the
No, it was like the only
primary
doctor that we, lived there that
Is
we
the one
had,
that got
and
hit by a train?
Huh?
The doctor that got run over by a train?
that part I don't know.
What's crazy is how many hip roofs do we have? Cause that's what the Masonic Lodge has.
Yeah.
That seems pretty significant.
You have a lot of gabled L's, those little,
Yes.
the Nelson houses are gabled L's.
Yeah.
A lot of those, that style, and that's very common.
A lot of added on sheds for more storage,
Yeah.
more room.
And the other thing to distinguish between is, the pioneer log and the rustic log, which were Mills logs.
Right.
You've got a lot of nice buildings that are log buildings as well in town. So anyway, if each of you comes up with, say, 5 properties, then you've got, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 properties. But then Madison can take those and find the overlap and weed out those where they're duplicative, in other words. And maybe that'll get us close to 10 properties right there.
Well, and when you're saying 10, are you including the 5 we already have?
No, I'm limited to 10 properties.
No, I mean, but we've already got landmarked some, so when you say 10.
Well, it depends on whose argument you're buying here
But I
tonight.
know, but you're including those, so we'd be hunting for 5 new ones.
It's up to you guys.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what you're,
I'd
I would
say 10
advise
already.
that, I'm advising that,
yeah.
to get them all on the same level of documentation from here on out.
So maybe that's another assignment, is that we each tell Madison what we think about that, you know?
So-
Should we do the full assessment on the ones that we've already landmarked, or just
I
some of
need a
them?
clarification on that.
Yes.
Does that mean all of this needs to be filled out? Or a certain part of this?
The site form,
Yes.
I'm gonna do a site form just like that for any property,
The
all
site
10
form would
properties.
have to be, this entire thing is what we'd have to do on those 4 properties or 3 properties.
On the 5, the landmark
He's
ones,
gonna do 10
10
to that
total.
depth.
Yeah, but I think, go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, and can we have him do it on those, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he's
I'm
giving
not
us
suggesting
10,
to do
and
that.
do we pick these 5 that have already been done as part of the 10?
Well, we know we don't have to do the water tank.
Well,
This is the question.
You
that's
feel
the
about
question.
that?
What I'm saying is see, so how many do we have landmarked already? Is it 4 or 5? We got
What,
5.
what do we have? We have saloon,
Saloon.
151,
Myers
155
Barn.
water tank, and Myers Barn is already,
Yeah, so that's the 5.
okay.
So the first assignment is give us feedback on whether we should do that full deep dive, have him do the full deep dive on all 5 of those. That's the
Okay.
first question. Or maybe 3 of them, or 2 of them, or none of them, or all of them, whatever. So that's the first assignment. Maybe you could send an email summarizing what our task is.
I will be
And then-
sending you deadlines and reminders. You will get so sick of me.
Okay,
You
perfect.
will need this information.
We'll be
Okay.
so glad that you're.
Then the
you're-
second assignment is select 5 or,
I think we should each come up with more than that.
Yes, and
see
then
what
the
the
crossover.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
and then,
so.
so 10, and then the crossover, what are the
well, we
most
already have
likely?
5, right?
Well-
How many more?
So pick 10 more.
Okay, that's what I'm
and-
saying,
and
5 or
everyone-
10 more.
Everyone pick 10, and then
No, I agree with that.
Madison will come down to
She'll
in
consolidate
addition
it
to
to
the
the
5
top
we already
5.
have.
Right,
And then,
we're on the same
and then we
page.
have the other question, which is which
Yeah,
ones get.
so that you're saying 10, and I was asking whether it would be 5 or 10.
Yeah.
So anyway, so the first assignment is of the 5 that we've already landmarked, how many of them should we do a deep dive on? The second assignment is to come up with another 10 in addition to those 5 that you think we should consider for landmark.
May I ask one question then?
Sure,
Myers Barn, once we have it, is that then going to be owned by the town?
yes,
Okay.
So I wouldn't worry about it, but I
exactly.
I know the owners that built it, so except for a date.
It's gonna be moved and repurposed over at the amphitheater next summer.
And
Which leaves
research is
3.
gonna- More research is gonna be done.
And the water
Right,
tower,
because-
I really don't think we need to worry about.
For it.
And he would
I
say,
agree.
let him do that, because then we can just pull from
Kind
that.
of a waste of money,
plaques and all that.
because there's not much information on it.
But,
Oh, you get a lot of mileage out of those site forms, definitely.
yeah.
So
You start putting together a more substantial history of the town, even though it's one property at a time.
So one added question I wanted to throw out there is, just since we're in this process of trying to figure out what's important, what are the next, could we ask everyone to also say, what are the next 10 that you're interested in for future research? Like,
After that.
As, if we get more grants, just so that we can be in this process of like, okay, these are the 10 I really like, these are the next 10. Is there any value to that at this point?
Great idea.
No, I think that's a great idea.
Well, could we
Then have that
could we
list.
on that second question, could we open it up to the full range, like all the way down to?
Well, we have places
Sure,
like
or-
the
or
Battle
if there-
Mountain Trading Post that
Yeah, if
people
there are
love.
others
Yeah.
that you think
Yeah.
are
And-
sites.
And Ron, I have a question about, is there any reason to do more research on buildings that have been demolished? Like our ice house?
I wouldn't do it.
Not
They're
worth
gone.
it.
They're gone. I mean, that's a good subject for a historian to work on if they're writing, like, say, a book about.
But not this
But
process.
not for preservation stuff.
Okay,
That could be all.
because we do have an ice
Yeah.
house that,
Yeah.
from what I've heard, there's almost no photos of, but was one of the most important ones in the country. and there's just the foundation left.
Loading the rail cars, yeah. right.
Yeah, because we used
Oh,
to load our lettuce.
I'm thinking of Texas Ice House like a bar. You're talking about the old ice house.
Yeah, we just have a foundation, and I have like,
Where they went up to
No,
Camp
I know
Hale, got
where,
the
I know
ice, brought
exactly.
it
We
down.
have the cement remnants there.
like there is a book written about it,
Yeah.
and I haven't bought the book yet, but I know it exists.
It's in that book. It talks about it.
Is there
Those
anything
talk
on
to
site
site
now, or is it?
About the reefer
It's
cars.
just found concrete
Okay.
foundations and the chutes where they used to throw the
Slide
ice
the ice down.
block down to the railroad. And Mr. Myers, that was his first job at age 5, trying to get the ice blocks down.
Yeah.
So I did
Yeah.
get a story from him when he was 5 years old. He recollects trying to swoosh the ice down to the rail cars.
That's amazing.
So then can I go back to my one question?
Sure, please.
Minturn Inn, 1917. If it is not in here, can we put it as one of our 10?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
You
You can do whatever you want.
give me a list of 10 properties within the survey area.
Yeah.
in the survey area.
And
Are
then
you just
another
asking-
list.
Can I just clarify that?
Mhm.
Do you literally want a list, or do you want us to do what research we can?
No, I
No,
want
a
I
list.
want a list.
Just a list.
That
Who's
makes
going to
it,
do the research,
property.
whatever the
Okay,
10 properties we end up
just wanted
with,
to
yes.
clarify, thank you.
Property.
But if we know anything like about
Okay,
any
yeah,
of
yeah,
these,
yeah.
write it down, and it can help him. And
Yeah.
I've remodeled a lot of these
Absolutely.
places, so I know a little bit.
Yeah. The
So-
second set of 10
I'll tell-
doesn't have to be set in the survey
And I'm
area.
not sure I can come up with 10, but whatever you come up with, up to 10 on the,
Second
yeah,
set.
on the second set, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not geographically limited to, you know, you can go beyond Cemetery Bridge if you want, like to catch the trading post or anything else.
And then the
Yeah,
other
barbershop.
sort of overriding
Yeah.
assignment is, if you know anything about any of these buildings,
Yeah.
Jot it down.
email it to Madison so she can compile it for
Yeah,
Ron.
yeah, it would help me to know, like, you know, the hospital.
You want pictures too,
Example.
right? If we have old pictures.
Any old pictures you
anything.
have, I would love to see, would be very helpful.
Is the old
Very
post office still
few.
here?
Huh?
The old post office.
No, it was
Well, one of
part-
them,
It was part of Mercantile, wasn't it?
it's next to, I think it was the Thai kitchen.
It was in
It's
something
one-
I was just reading.
Cause I went to the Library of Congress, and apparently in 1916, somebody dynamited the safe in the old post office and stole $300 worth of
This is
stamps.
more 50s.
But, yeah, I don't know.
Here in Minturn.
Yeah.
The 50s is a little bit more
Alright.
documented.
Uh-huh.
Do we-
Before that, we were so poor, no one took photos of anything,
Yeah.
and no one wrote stuff down. So just like my house in Red Cliff, like once the mines, the silver crash happened, like people just did not care. Little was written down in the record books
Right.
before 1910. I found out, so it was really hard to do research before then.
Yeah.
This has been a really good discussion. I want to ask you a question. Is there anything missing, what we wanted to accomplish tonight?
No, not that I know of.
Okay,
This was very, very productive.
okay.
And, but I like
We do
how
have
you,
a few other items we need to
you
get to.
did point out,
Yeah.
looking at the future, next surveys, that HBCs and towns and cities are invested in always. What's the next survey gonna be?
Right,
It might not be for another 2 years or whatever, but you wanna start thinking about what will be the next priorities. As we start to wrap this up, you'll wanna think about that, and when should we launch the next survey project? Get another grant and get going on the next one, so that'll start that process of thinking about
yeah, I
prioritization.
think that's a good suggestion.
Do y'all think y'all can have y'all's list to me by September 26th? It gives you 2.5 weeks.
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
Yes.
So hopefully that can be
Just-
processed.
That's just the list of the next ones.
Just the list.
Does that include the
Yeah.
information more?
She's
that
gonna
we
send
need?
us, our homework. And
I
it's
mean,
gonna
like
be-
he's requesting any info we know on any of
Right,
these
and
things.
obviously any info that you can give me by the 26th, awesome. But if you can't give me all of the info that you're thinking of, obviously, this will not stop as I leave the country. I can tell people, I can tell Cindy or I can tell Scott, hey, these people are going to be emailing you while I'm gone. Please forward it on to Ron and I'll give you a heads up on what their emails are so you know to be looking for them should they come in. but anything that you can get to me before I leave the country would be awesome.
When is that date you're leaving?
I leave
Should we
October 3rd.
maybe put in that we
October
should
3rd?
put a certain, subject
Put that
line
in your
in,
email.
like a really specific subject line, so Cindy, whatever, knows that goes, that forwards there.
Yeah, and in terms of information, you don't have to send me a whole book about the property, just to think about what
Well,
might
no,
help
but
me.
for instance, on 132 Main, which is also 131 Main, well, no, that's not there. 132, which used to be Gamble's hardware store.
Yeah.
The gentleman who owned it for many, many years is on our planning and zoning. He's gonna be able to give us information on
Yeah,
it.
that's great.
And I
So
don't know how
anything-
long he
Daryl?
owned it, yeah.
Anything that you can send to Madison that you could get to me about your little group of properties that you'd like to see prioritized would help me get going on the research. That's all I need to know is,
Okay.
you know, any names associated with the property, or that it was the hospital. I wouldn't have known that looking at a residential
Right.
building. Those are bits and pieces of information that will help me get the research going. That's really what I need.
And Ella probably knows quite a bit about Mercantile because Pete used to do fishing lures, hand tie them and sell them there. And they know about that. Somebody else, I think Ella knows about the dance floor that used to be on top of Magusto's.
Yeah,
So those kind of things, I can pick in some of that, but I'll get my list together first and then we'll
okay.
go from there.
The first thing is to get that list, because if if that building is not on the list, I don't need to worry about whether anything about related to the dance floor there.
Yeah.
You know? Okay.
All right, so
But it could go on our second list.
I've got it.
So Madison is gonna, put together some instructions to us with our homework. And it's gonna be, in the categories of, you know, on the 5 we've already landmarked, how do we wanna do the full deep dive on all 5 or less than 5? And then number 2, within the survey that we've been giving, including adding the Minturn in, which was omitted, what are your top 10, right? And then beyond that, anything significant inside or outside of the survey area that you think we should be thinking about in the future. And then that's the homework. And then the request also is at any time that we have any information or photos, send them to Madison and she'll forward them on so we'll have that included, so Ron will have it.
And I would
Okay,
like to
so-
take on the project, if Kelly will help me, what I can't do, to go through Minturn memoirs and put addresses to it.
It's been one of my goals, I just lack time constantly.
But I mean, I'll go through it first and then I'll
Yeah.
give you the copy, because I've got extra
And
copies.
I'd love Lynn
And then
to
you-
help, because he's pretty clear too.
That
He
would,
gets-
that would be a phenomenal achievement right there.
Yeah, connect us.
Okay.
Awesome.
I love talking to him.
Thank you so much, Ron.
Yes.
You're
thank
welcome.
Where are
you.
you driving back to? Remind us you have a
Fort
3
Collins.
Fort Collins, okay.
Yeah.
Drive safe.
Thank
Yeah,
You're
be
going back
careful.
tonight, I assume.
I have to, yeah.
Okay, all right. Be careful.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you again.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate
I
It's nice to
appreciate
see
it.
you all in person.
Yes.
likewise.
And I
Thanks.
apologize for the time run over with the
There's nothing you
train.
can do about it. I was sitting here listening. This was all great information. It's a great.
It is, it's just still
Where was the guy from?
Sam Light with Sursa.
What is Sursa?
Sursa's our insurance company.
Oh, that's really,
For all-
that's,
Look at your face.
Yeah.
that's so unusual. Is he an attorney?
Yeah.
He is an attorney for Sursa, and it looks great on our insurance records that we have these
They-
yearly
the
trainings,
training?
and
But it's
that way they know that it happens, but
It's actually good.
it's
good
it's
info.
fun.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Okay, great.
That old house is on top of
Let's go back.
That was built for Ella.
Can
So
I
they'll
ask,
have influence.
Yeah.
clarify,
Sure.
if I need help with my homework,
Yeah,
I can really only meet with one person, right?
Yes.
right.
Okay. I
Otherwise,
just wanted to
One at a
clarify
time.
that.
One at a time.
Yes, I
There you
just
go.
wanted to
Yes, but you
clarify that.
can talk to Lynn and then to Kelly and then go back. Like, I know it seems convoluted, but we really do need to not violate the open meetings law.
Absolutely.
No, it's a good
But,
question. It's a good question.
But you can definitely talk to different
Okay, we
people and
can't
go back
like
and forth.
have a party at my house.
No.
Okay.
Not.
And
A designation party, a landmark
And
party.
if you talk to Lynn about one thing, you can't talk to any of the rest of us about that item, but you can talk.
Yeah, we can
can.
separately.
But that's in series, that breaks the rule.
No, that's only if it's about a specific
There's
application.
there's no
No,
application.
that's
Oh, is it?
quasi judicial, you can't even talk to each other.
This isn't
For,
quasi-judicial.
for open meeting rules, you can't talk in series. I can't talk to Ken and then turn around and talk to Kelly about the same item. That violates
But it's
open
not
meeting.
judicial though, we're not,
No,
we're
it's,
not
it's,
ruling
it's
on
the
it.
open meeting law.
Okay, alright,
They're two different things.
okay.
Judicial, you can't talk to each other at all.
Isn't this just discussion though?
Cause we're not,
I
Is that a
can
question
get an
for
interpretation from the town attorney if you'd really like.
That would be great,
cause it's not really,
because then maybe we could sit down together and wipe out some of these.
Oh, no, you definitely can't sit down together.
Oh, you can't sit down together, but we
I know
can
that for
talk from, if I don't have the answer, she can go to Kelly.
I
and ask.
believe you can.
I
I'm
do
not
too.
100% sure.
and then Andy's house.
Is
too,
that something,
she's
you wanna
like
add to your plate to check that?
Sure.
Like,
I have a meeting
mean,
with the
I don't
town
wanna
attorney.
add more to your plate.
I have a
mean,
meeting with the
get
town
rid of
attorney tomorrow.
Okay, if I get everybody's attention,
on the whole block.
So we can go home. I
My
got
whole
Lynn,
block
it.
is
Lynn.
all the blocks.
hey gang, can I get everybody's attention? We just have a few more things to run through on the agenda. We finished our special presentations. We have no business items. Do we have any discussion or direction items beyond what we've already discussed? The answer is no. No staff reports. Any commission, our next area is, this is where if there's any comments anybody wants to make as commissioners, just commission comments. Yes, Lynn?
Market is over, my little table will be gone.
Yep,
However, I have somebody who is interested in putting some of those things we had for sale there, that the money would go to historical in their store. Cindy
Great.
said it's okay, I'm gonna have a meeting, and if it's okay with all of you, we're gonna do that for the winter.
okay,
Is that okay? It's the, it's the poster like that, I have 45 of those left in the smaller size.
Yeah.
I have Bill's memoir books, I have some Eagle County books, I have,
I think that's great. Where will it go? Can you tell us yet?
not until that's confirmed.
Okay, that's fine. But we'll
But
look forward.
they approached
Will
me
you
on
tell
it.
us once you do it though?
I will,
Okay,
but
great,
they approached me on it, and we're supposed to get together this week, so.
great,
And they're totally under the understanding that they make no money of it.
right,
It's only donation.
yeah, that's great. Yes,
I'd like to just congratulate her, she was written up today in the email, and
I was?
Yes,
volunteer and intern.
newsletter.
Oh, you didn't know? No, but thank you. Too
congratulations.
bad you don't get email.
She's a rock star. You're a
Sorry.
rock star, Lynn. We all appreciate
Yeah,
you.
you are, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, congratulations, that's very deserving. Okay, future agenda items, were there any other comments? Future agenda items we have on here, ideas to encourage historic preservation and Minturn, we talked about some of those today. I think we're all pretty tired, so let's punt that to a next meeting. That was something that I wanted
Which
to
will
talk
be in
about.
November, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And the second was I think this was your comment about landmark discussion about non-building designations. And I think that when we do our top 10, let's remember that we can also include in that second 10, anything we want to include, so it can be landmarks, et cetera.
It could be the ones that have already been landmarked.
Well, it could be the ones that are already been landmarked, or they could be, bridges, tunnels.
But he did
Train
say it's
stuff.
not worth it to do
Trestles.
buildings that are already demolished.
Right, yeah.
Like the turntable obviously would have been a cool.
Does that
thing.
cover your item, you think, that, or do you want to talk about that again in the future? Well, landmarking discussion about non-building designations.
Oh,
You brought up the tree at like
yeah, the
155.
trees at 131 and 150.
Well, I think this process will flesh out, but I guess what I would say is I would underscore that it doesn't have to necessarily just be a structure
It
or
can
a
be
building,
something
sorry.
else.
It can be something else. It could be the railroad, old remnants of
It could be the
railroad
Russell
towers and the old crossings. It can be down at Tigwan, the aqueduct. It can be whatever you
Trestle.
want.
Trestle.
What do you call it? Trestle, whatever you call it. And then the last item was, is that?
Yeah.
Okay. The last item was professional display about the town's inventory. I can't remember,
That was Tracy's.
was that Tracy's?
That was mine, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for jarring my memory.
Is that something we can move to the next
that
meeting,
goes-
or?
Yes, because
This
that
is
goes
under-
with outreach, and like,
Yeah, okay, so let's,
This is under future agenda, like, this is not on the agenda today.
okay, all
And
right.
it's
All
same
right,
with
well, I just want
the
to
same
acknowledge that
thing
we've
that
captured,
you mentioned, that how to engage people.
yeah, it's a similar,
It's the same,
okay.
under,
Okay, well, with that, we've got 5 minutes to spare, but does anybody have anything else, or I'll take a motion, look for a motion to adjourn?
I'm still
Yes, go ahead.
working with Eagle County Historical, and they're still talking and everything going on about possibly getting Malcolm's books republished.
Yeah,
However, he will not be Historical Citizen of the Year until next summer when he comes back from his first year in college, so we've got time to work on that.
okay, and I'd like to continue to stay involved with you and help you.
Okay.
and where is it?
do that, Okay,
Virginia.
anything else?
Make a motion to adjourn.
All right, anybody
I
second?
second it.
All right, all in favor? All right, great meeting, thank you, everybody. Tammy, next meeting, we're gonna get to know you a little bit better, we ran out of